guys, so I'm hoping this comes out well. This is part 1 of the DEX210v2 build series, the DEX210v2 by Team Durango. Got my box to my right here, and my toolbox down here right below me. This is not going to be the most prettiest video that you guys have seen, but I hope it does get to the point. My main goal is to get through at least a couple pages with you guys and building this kit today, and that's how the whole build series is going to go. I'm going to label this, say I get through 1 through 5. I'm going to title this video Build Series Pages 1 through 5 and stuff like that, and so on. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you let me know. That's enough talking here. Let's go on and build this kit. Guys, on page 1 of the, well, it's actually page 10, but your first page for building your truck, or your buggy, excuse me, does call for getting your chassis out and the side pods. I have to note one thing, that I did get a different chassis for this build that I am trying out. It does come with a really nice aluminum chassis, but I do want to try out this Exotech carbon fiber chassis. Picked this up a few days ago and it came in, and I'm really excited to see how this thing does. This is the exact same thing, putting this on your car as the aluminum one, so any step I do on this one will be the same as the original stock Durango one. Guys, this video is not going to be edited a lot. I want to get through the building. That is the main thing of the video. If I do stutter a little bit, it is my fault. I am going to be focusing on building the car. Let's go ahead and get this build going here. Now that I am going to be starting with the chassis and the 2 side pods. So let me open up this box and get that stuff out real quick. That is going to be your biggest bag, bag A. So as I said before, guys, I'm not going to be using the stock aluminum chassis for now, at least, until I'm done testing out this Exotech carbon fiber chassis. But this is a really nice chassis, so don't worry if you guys are using this with the stock car. I just want to try this carbon fiber out. I've never used it before, and it looked real cool, so I went ahead and picked it up. So let me put this chassis aside for now. Before I went and put the side pods on here, I went ahead and assembled the Exotech chassis. The only extra part that you do put on is this angled piece that is aluminum to match your stock aluminum chassis to fit the buggy. My impressions real quick on this chassis is it's really nice, looks really good, and I can't wait to try it out. So thank you, Exotech, that looks really good. For the next step, like I said, unedited, something just fell, don't mind that. So next step, guys, I'm going to be throwing on the side pods here. It calls for a total of 10 screws, 2 and 3 by 6 millimeters, and 8 and 3 by 8 millimeters. So that's going to be a total of 10 screws that you're going to be needing, that are of course provided inside the bag that comes with your side pods. So in each main bag, so like bag A and stuff like that, there are little sub bags like A5 or A1. A1 is the one I'm going to be using today. It's by Durango. Let me go ahead and spill out these screws. So there is actually a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 total screws. Looking back at the manual here, throw on the side pods. So now that I have this side pod lined up, I'm going to go ahead and find the screw that I'm going to be needing, which is 704006. That is going to be your 3 by 8 millimeter screw, which is going to be your longer one out of the 2 different screws there. So all I'm going to do is set in this screw right here in this countersunk little bottom piece of the chassis here. Since this is brand new plastic, it is going to be a little bit tough to screw in the first couple times. In some parts that was fairly easy. So now that you have at least one screw in there, you can go ahead and relax and keep your hand off of it and go ahead and screw in the rest down this side, and then once you get it aligned on the opposite side, it's going to be the exact same thing, same amount of screws, same screws, but just on opposite sides. Off the main, or finish off page 1 here, you're going to want to go ahead and grab this part tree out of bag A, which holds this piece right here, which is basically a plastic piece that goes on this part of the chassis, this opening. You can buy separate aluminum ones or metal ones or weights if you want to transfer weight in different parts of your RC car. Do is just put it on just like this, set it in there, it'll sit in there nice and snug, and you'll go on through the bottom and screw on two of the smallest screws, like I said before, the 3x6 millimeters, the two that comes out of bag A1 on each side of the weight piece. Now you guys can see that I have each side pod on the chassis. I got the little weight tray there. Looks really cool. It does say TD right there for Team Durango. Not sure if it's focusing here, but it does say TD. The carbon fiber looks really good. So that is it for page 1, guys. We're going to go ahead and move on to page 2, where you start your steering assembly. Now that I've got everything for the steering assembly out of bag A2 here, I am going to go ahead and start it off. This might be the last part of this part 1, guys, because this may take a little while. So starting off, it is calling for you to take off these two pieces here, your steering rack, or your steering cranks actually, and it's going to ask you to put in two bearings in each of these racks, which are provided in this little bag that comes inside of A2. So let me go ahead and open it up here. Dump the stuff out of this little bag here. Like I said, guys, this video is not going to be edited much, so if there is background noise, I do apologize. So make sure you're careful, guys, when emptying this bag. There are little shims and washers in here that you're going to want to be careful of not to lose. Now here are your 4 bearings. Not sure how well you guys can see them, but these 4 are going to sit inside of each side of this part of your crank, bottom piece, and your top piece. All you do is slide it in there, press down on it a little bit until you feel it kind of get tight and smack in there, I guess you could say. And then on this side, you're going to do the same exact thing. Push down as hard as you can. There you go, you guys heard that snap there. And then same thing on this one. On the steering rack, you're going to start off with your smaller ball joint here, and I like to put it inside of the middle piece on your crank. When you guys are building your kit, you will know what I'm talking about. And then it calls for the little nuts that come inside of your sub bag in A2 to be screwed on, or to be put on the bottom of your little ball joint here, and to keep it inside of your steering rack. That's all you're going to need to do, and then repeat this process on the opposite side. For your steering rack, you're going to get these little cups here. Not sure how well you can see them, and they insert actually into your cranks on this little front piece on each crank. Make sure that the flat piece of your cup is sticking out towards your steering rack, and the same thing to the other side, so they just sit inside of this little hole right here on your crank. Now this ball joint right here goes inside of one of your cranks here with the little cylinder or little cone or little piece that's sticking out right here. Don't know what I would call it. Like I said, unedited. And it screws in just right on top using a 2mm hex driver. So once you have the little ball stud on there like that, the next thing you're going to want to do is get your little, what I like to call a little wing piece, I'm not sure what you'd really call it, and put it right where you would need it when putting on your cranks. So go ahead and line your cranks up on there. What you're going to want to do once you have this piece from your part tree, you're going to want to get one of your small shims here and put it onto the little angled piece that is sitting up on this little wing piece. It's hard for me to do it on video, but once you guys are building your kit, you guys will know what I am talking about. So let me go ahead and do that for you. Now once you have your ball studs in your steering rack and your ball stud on your steering crank, and you have each of your little cone pieces, or whatever you want to call them, inside of each crank, you're going to want to get these 2 screws. These are your 3x18mm 2mm hex screws that you're going to want to be screwing in through this little piece that comes off of your part tree. Little piece here. And what it does is it goes across each crank, and it kind of acts as a brace to hold them together. It's a pretty durable little plastic piece, to be honest. You wouldn't think it would be, but it actually is. And each of these long screws here do go inside of this brace and hold your cranks together. Now it does call for you to put on one of these little silver shims here so it doesn't mess up your bearing when your cranks are moving back and forth. So you go ahead and set in the screw. What I like to do is just put my first one in first so it stays there, and go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. Screwing your steering rack on to your cranks, all you need to do is make sure you look at your manual, and those little cones that we inserted in each crank need to be facing out towards you, and you set your steering rack on each side or on top of each side, and you put in 2 screws. It's best to use Loctite that is provided by Team Durango when screwing on these screws. Get your Team Durango provided thread lock here, the red little bottle that is provided in your kit. I'm going to be using one that I've had already before from a previous kit because I do not want to, I just want to finish this one off before I use a newer one. So what you're going to be doing with this one, just as before, you're going to be putting on a shim, but this is going to be the bigger shim that comes in it, so the black ones that are provided in your little sub bag for bag A2. Bring it in through the bottom of the bell crank and have it screw in to the top of your steering rack. Once you're done with putting on the 2 screws on the bottom of your steering rack here, it's going to look like that. And now your next step is to get this little wing piece here and screw on the 2 screws that you've had sitting inside of your steering cranks here on the top of them. You're going to want to get those 2 screws and make sure you slide them in very nice and smoothly on the top of this little wing piece. There are going to be these little angles that are sticking, or that are going in an angle, this little hole here. You're going to want to screw those into there. Make sure they're not super tight or you're going to have some very tough steering. Go ahead and play with that and make sure you guys have that nice and set for you guys. And basically when you're done with that, your front steering assembly will be done for page A2. I'm actually going to go ahead and move on to the next page and put this on the chassis. Very easy to put on your steering assembly. The manual shows you perfectly. What you want to do is look at your manual and line up the few screws that it tells you that need to be screwed in. There's a total of 3, which are going to be these ones on your chassis. 1, 2, and this one right down here in the middle, 3. Self-explanatory, you guys. So once you guys get that done, you're going to move over to bag A4. Now the servo I'll be using in this kit is the Savox 1257 TG servo. Really quick and speedy servo here, and I know it'll work great. Make sure you cut off any extra little tree parts there that can be left on to any of your plastics in the kit. What I like to do is just use a scissor piece or something like this. This is wire cutters. I can get into it nice and close. Snip it off till I like it enough, or until I think it's even enough to throw onto the kit. So now that we are on page A5 here, we are going to now move on and put on the side panels that will be holding your servo into your chassis. It's very easy to do. All you need is a total of 8 screws that are provided in your A5 sub bag to bag A. Now that you have A5 open, go ahead and pour them out there. Make sure you don't lose any of your screws. You do not want to do that. So the first thing that I am going to do is go to part tree 320124 and rip off your little side panels here. You're going to have a little bit of leftover plastic on there. You can scrape that off later. It's not a big deal. So each little panel here has a TD logo right here. And what you're going to do with this is that logo you're going to want to be facing out towards you. So it's very, very self-explanatory. And right here, there are screws in on the bottom of your chassis that you're going to be screwing in to hold these in. There's going to be 4 total on the bottom of the chassis, 2 right here, and 2 right here. The screws that you're going to be screwing in on the bottom of your chassis are going to be part or screw number 704007. There's going to be a total of 6 of these on this page. These screws are 3 by 10 millimeter screws. So these are going to be your shorter ones out of the little bag that you took out. All I'm going to do is sit here, place them into the bottom of the chassis, get my 2 millimeter hex driver, stick it right into the screw here, and just screw away like you would normal. So once you have those 4 screws done, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Flip it around. What I do next is get my Stavox servo, or whatever servo you are using. You'll be able to tell where these mounts line up. There's a little circle piece here that will line up. Not sure if you'll be able to see it here on this part of your little side panel on each side of them. So it's just slide in nice and easy. Team Durango servos are mounted a lot differently than other servos. There is a benefit to this. So once you have it in there, you'll see it just slides right in. Looks very nice. You'll see that there is a little bit of a gap, or it's not flush. That is because there are screws on each side of the panel, so 1 and 2. They're going to be the same size screws you used to screw into the bottom of your chassis earlier, and they're going to be screwed into the side of your mount, which will be hugging your servo to keep it nice and tight inside your chassis. Once you get this last screw screwed in, you're going to see that it looks very flush and nice on the side of your chassis here. A couple more turns here. There you go. So now you see it looks flush. You can run your finger over it. The next, you're going to have 2 screws to final this page up, and each of these screws are going to go into the top right here of your little panel. This is what I like to call it, your panel. You'll see these little openings on top. They're going to screw in, drop down into your side pods, and hold these panels in just a little bit more to your chassis and your side pods. Sorry guys, motorcycle just drove by, unedited like I said before. So as I said, you just screw in your screw 705011, which is a screw size of 3 by 14 millimeters. They screw in right on top here. There's going to be a little hole on the top of your panel, and they're pretty long, so don't worry if it takes a little bit of time to screw in. And like I said before earlier in the video, this is all new plastic, so it's going to be a little bit tough to screw in some areas. I just want to give you guys a closer look of what your car should be looking like by this part of the build. This is pages 10 through 15, or 1 through 5. You're going to have your steering rack all assembled, your servo placed in, your chassis, which I am using the carbon fiber, your pods in, all your screws on the bottom, your weight tray, and you'll have your servo in. Now we're going to move on to the front assembly, which is going to be your front bumper. Move over to page, which I believe this is going to be my 1, 2, 3, 4, my 6th page, which you're going to be opening bag B1. Bag B, guys. Bag B is going to hold, looks like it holds your shock towers, your front A-arms, your toe adjustments, your front bulkhead, and stuff like that. So on this page, B1, page 6 of this part 1 series, you're going to be building your front assembly, so your shock tower, and that's basically it. You're going to be putting on your shock tower. Once you find the size screws you're going to be needing right here, place aside the extra screws that you'll be needing later, and keep these in their own pile so you do not get disorganized. So what you're going to want to do is grab your chassis brace here, align it up with the 4 holes on the brace to your front shock tower, and it's as simple as just screwing in the 4 screws through your shock tower into the brace. Wanted to give you guys a little bit of a closer look here. What you're going to be doing is just, what I like to do actually is just drop each of my screws into each part of the shock tower. Some of you guys might like to do it another way, but this is just what I like to do, showing you guys how I do it in my build series. So what I do is I hold each screw, line it up with the chassis brace, or whatever you want to call it, and just go ahead and start screwing in each of these screws. Once you have your chassis brace and your shock tower screwed in together, it should look like this. You should have your 4 screws in place and it should be able to hold on together nice and tight. Moving on to putting on our ball studs into our shock tower. It calls for 2, or actually 4 washers in total, plastic washers off tree number 330363. They're going to be your washer number 1. Once you have your 4 washers here, you're going to want to move on to putting your ball studs into your shock tower now. It calls for you to place them in hole number 1. You can adjust it later to number 2, but I'm going to be doing the way that the kit tells you to be doing it. So all that is your most inside hole towards your shock tower. It's calling for 2, or it doesn't call for, it requires a 2mm hex driver to screw this in. But before screwing it in, get your 2 plastic washers that you took off your part tree there, washer number 1, and put them on to your ball stud. You can also use aluminum ones if you have some. It'll all work the same. They provide you with plastic ones. Once you have your 1 ball stud in, you're going to want to move on and do the same thing to the other side. Make sure you screw on, or you put on both washers before you screw the ball stud into your shock tower. Like I said, it is a 2mm driver that you use. You just stick it into the top of your ball stud there. See, you can see that I have the washers already in there. And all I do is just put it into hole 1 and start wrenching in. So once you have your shock tower, once you have the ball studs into your shock tower, it should look like this. To screw it into your chassis, you're going to want to put your front bulkhead down first. So that's what we're going to be doing in this part of the video. Your front bulkhead is attached to this part tree, which is number 330578 here. It's this piece right here. Should pull it off just like so. It is a little bit of a pain, so if you do have trouble, you can go ahead and use a pair of scissors, but if you just twist it around a little bit, it shouldn't be that hard. You'll just have a little leftover piece, but you can cut that off later. Front bulkhead trimmed off. I went ahead and used some of my Lexan scissors that I use for cutting bodies. So once you have this down, you can go ahead and grab your chassis here, and you're just going to put it on like the manual tells you to. It's going to be kind of hard for me to explain it, but this side right here that has the gap and it's not flush or flat like this is going to be towards your chassis, so it can sit there and be flush with your chassis plate. And once you have it sitting there, you can go ahead and get 4 screws, which are going to be your longest out of all the screws that came in that little sub bag, which was bag B1. Yeah, bag B1. It's going to be your screws that are size 3 by 18mm. So they're going to be screw number 704001. Like I said, the longest screws that are in that bag. All these screws screw into is the bottom of your chassis. 1, 2, 3, and 4. What I'm going to do is just slide them all in. Once you have them all slided in, you can go ahead and set your chassis brace right on top and start screwing in. This is the way I've always done it, but if you find an easier way, go ahead and do it that way. But if you guys like this way, follow it. Either way, you're screwing in 4 screws to the bottom of your bulkhead to your chassis brace with your shock tower on it. So you can go ahead and put your finger on top of your chassis brace here and your shock tower and hold it against these screws. And while you're screwing in, just keep your finger there and use your 2mm, wow, I'm shaking. Use your 2mm hex driver and just start screwing in. Make sure they're nice and snug. So once you have those 4 screws screwed into the bottom, it should look like this on the bottom of your chassis, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now your front bulkhead should be screwed onto your shock tower. Now I'm going to be moving on to the final step of this part 1 video, guys. It's just going to be putting on these little button screws here. These button screws, they're not really button screws, but they're these little cylinder caps, and your screw goes through them, and they just basically place in to your chassis brace here, and you screw right through. Bring it in a little bit closer here. So this is basically what I do, is when I have my button out, set my chassis to the side here, I'll grab my screw, slide in right through, Place it on my 2mm hex driver. Let it sit there, make sure you don't drop it. Grab your chassis again, and just line it up with the hole on the side of your chassis here. So once you find the hole that your screw screws into, you go ahead and start screwing in, and your button should be flush with your chassis. Once you're done getting that screwed in, it should just look just like this, nice and flush. Your cap or button, whatever you want to call it, should be sitting in this little brace right here, nice and flush. It will be sticking out a little bit, but you will know when you're done. Make sure you repeat the same step we did earlier on the opposite side. So this concludes part 1 of the Team Durango DEX210v2 build series. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys got some help through this build. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them down below. If you guys have any criticism, please let me know. Also, if you guys like this video, please like. If you haven't already, please subscribe. It really helps me out. Now guys, this is what your car should look like once you're done with part 1. We go ahead and screw in my first screw here. Now this is new plastics, brand new. Damn, that was a bad voice crack.